I decided to kind of take a turn and focus on being helpful to couples to help you figure out how to go upstream
Yeah.
and really focus on prevention and helping them to have the information and the tools and the skills to do marriage well, because that's what people say they want. They want,
Sure.
they say I do with the best of
Mm,
intentions. And then you get into life, things get challenging, and
yeah.
you do what you know to do, not
Mhm.
necessarily perhaps what you might need to do in order to move in a healthier, more constructive direction.
Welcome to the Intertwined Life podcast. I am your host, Jenny Zentz. I am a wife and a mom on a mission. I've got a passion to help women discover practical ways to apply the power of God's Word to our everyday stuff. I truly believe that our walks with the Lord should be seamlessly intertwined with our everyday lives. It should affect every move we make and every breath we take. So come on, let's do life together. You've got this, because He's got you. Hey, friends. So, what is your marriage looking like? Whether you are saying, hey, we're in a great place and we want to keep it that way, or if you're feeling like, I don't even know if I can make it another day, this episode has got something for you. I am so excited to bring you this interview with Julie Baumgardner. She is the Senior Director of WinShape Marriage. And if you're not familiar with WinShape, it is the ministry branch of Chick-fil-A. Okay. So, when I saw WinShape pop up as an opportunity of someone to have on this show, I immediately jumped at it, and I'm so, so glad I did. These people know their chicken and they know their ministry. And trust me, Julie is bringing so much value to us today. And also, remember, I am doing a very special giveaway for the foreseeable future. If you write a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, okay, I guess you can write in a review, but I'd really like it to be 5 stars. So if you could just do 5 stars, that'd just make me really happy. But if you review this podcast and or share it with someone, send me a screenshot of the review or of the text message where you share it so that I have proof of that. And you will be entered to win a free book of your choice. I have a reading list of some books that I am reading through or have recently read through and really recommend. The winner will be chosen the first of each month, and that winner can go on that list, which you can find in the show notes. And I'll be constantly changing that list. And you can enter every month by sending me evidence of a share where you share the show with a friend, just like, hey, listen to this episode, really enjoyed it, thought you might like it. Screenshot that, email it to me. And by doing that, you'll be entered. And then whoever's name is drawn on the first will have the chance to go on that list, pick whatever book they like, and I will send it straight to your door. So, okay, Miss Julie, welcome to the Intertwined Life podcast.
Thank you. I am honored to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. I do want you to just kind of share with us a little about yourself, your life, your ministry, what brought you to this point before we jump in here for
Mhm.
the heart of your message.
Well, I'm married to Jay. We are in our 35th year of marriage. We're both children of divorce. So we have worked very
Yeah.
hard at having a healthy marriage, not perfect, but healthy.
Yeah.
We have a daughter and she is married. They live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We
Mhm.
have two grand dogs, two golden retrievers,
Uh-huh.
which is quite funny because we were actually given a golden retriever as a lingerie shower gift when we
Oh,
got
that is
married.
hilarious. I did it come out wearing the no. How cute is
So
that?
we named her Lacey
Oh, I
and
love it.
had her for 12 years, but we've had golden retrievers our
That's
whole entire
adorable.
married life. And our daughter and son-in-law started out their marriage with two golden retrievers.
Aw,
So we think
that's
that's
sweet.
fun.
Yeah.
Uh, but I do this because my parents divorced when I was 17. And I that was very traumatizing for
Yeah.
me in a lot of ways. And I went off to college thinking that I would be a counselor and that I would
Mm.
work with families who had children who had special needs because I had grown up with a brother who had a lot of special needs. But when this whole thing happened, I decided to kind of take a turn and focus on being helpful
Mm.
to couples to help you figure out how to go upstream
Yeah.
and really focus on prevention and helping them to have the information and the tools and the skills to do marriage well, because that's what people say they want. They want,
Sure.
they say I do with the best of
Mm.
intentions. And then you get into life, things get challenging, and
Yeah.
you do what you know to do, not
Mhm.
necessarily perhaps what you might need to do in order to move in a healthier, more constructive direction. So
Absolutely.
that's how I landed kind of in this field. And I worked with adolescents for a long time.
Mm.
I was the president and CEO of a nonprofit based out of Chattanooga for, I guess, 20 plus years. And it's called First Things First, still going strong and helping people to have healthy relationships. And then came to WinShape, and I love what I do. It is absolutely something I'm passionate about. And people ask me, don't you get tired? I'm like, I don't get tired. This fuels me because when I can see the light bulb go on for people,
Yeah.
and they have aha moments,
Yeah.
I just feel like this is what the Lord has called me to do with my life.
Mhm.
So
I think that's the difference, right? It's not that you don't get tired, but you're so fueled by it, right?
yes.
It's like there, God gives you that grace. When you're in the
Yes.
place he wants you to be in, it's
Yeah.
oh, there's that oomph, that spiritual oomph,
Exactly.
right? That
That's a
just
great way to
comes.
describe
It
it. Yes.
it just recharges your batteries
Yes.
because you're walking in what
Hmm.
he wants you to do with his strength and not your own. And that's
Yes.
it
Right.
totally lights you up. I get it.
Yeah.
So what is can you share your role and can you explain a little bit about WinShape
Hmm.
and exactly what
Yes.
WinShape is?
Yes. So my role is the senior director of WinShape Marriage. So I am responsible for all things marriage within the WinShape Foundation. We offer marriage enrichment retreats, romantic adventures, marriage discipleship equipping.
Yeah.
We have some therapeutic experiences, including marriage intensives, and then also a really neat week-long experience for couples who aren't in crisis, but they're facing challenges. And
Mm.
then we also have opportunity for senior pastors, ministry leaders, and international missionaries who need just some rest and renewal. So we
Yeah.
provide rest and renewal
So good.
experiences that are week long and very beautiful. So that is WinShape Marriage. But the WinShape Foundation was actually founded in 1984 by Mr. Cathy, who's also the founder of Chick-fil-A. And initially, we had a college program because Mr. Cathy was very invested in making sure that people who worked for him had the opportunity to get a college education.
Mm.
So the WinShape College program started, and it's based on leadership and discipleship in addition to going to school and getting a college degree. And then shortly after that, WinShape camps came along.
Yeah.
And so we have residential camps at Berry and a couple of other locations, and then day camps across the country where we
Hmm.
partner with churches. And in a summer, we will see somewhere around 30,000 children. And I
Yeah.
believe last year there were around 1,600 children who actually gave their
Mhm.
lives to Christ as a
Wow.
result of attending camp. So that is just incredible.
That's
And then we
awesome.
have WinShape Homes, which is group homes and then foster care, because Mr. Cathy felt very strongly that every
Mm.
child should have the opportunity to grow up in a safe and stable environment where they can flourish.
Yeah.
And then WinShape Teams is leadership development. So they work with nonprofits, churches, corporations to help build strong leadership, no matter where you sit
Yeah.
within the organization, to help you lead well from the seat that you're in.
Beautiful.
And then WinShape Marriage.
Beautiful.
So
Oh, there's so much behind that chicken sandwich. There's
there
so
really
much
is.
more. There's so much
Yes,
more.
that is
It's
so
beautiful.
true.
Actually, the
Yes.
day camps, the First Baptist Church here in Indialantic, literally like a 5-minute walk from me, had one of the day camps last year. And
Oh,
of
I
course, it
love
was a
that.
huge hit. And it's just
Yes.
such a blessing to see. And I know everyone gets excited because
Hmm.
they've built a brand. Chick-fil-A has built a brand that is not, we're just about chicken, we're about so much more. And you can tell when you walk
Yeah.
into a Chick-fil-A, from the
Yeah.
cleanliness of the bathrooms to the friendliness of the teenagers, right? Behind
Yes.
the desk. And that makes such a difference. And so
Yes.
anything that WinShape does and that the Kathy family has done is just holds such a legacy.
Yeah. We are standing on the shoulders
Yes.
of some great folks and seeking to honor the legacy of Jeanette and Truett,
Mhm.
Kathy, and certainly the Kathy family.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Well, I was honored because when I saw the email come through with the idea to have you on the podcast and I saw WindShape, I'm like, yes, yes, I want them. I know they could do good stuff. So as I learned more
I
about
love
you and
that.
your message and what you've done has been just so inspiring and exciting. And this episode is going to air either April or May. And my husband and I are going to be celebrating 18 years of marriage in April. So excited. I know. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Which is
Yay.
just
Yeah.
crazy how fast time goes. Oh my
Ah,
goodness.
isn't it though?
Oh gosh. So, but relationships is definitely kind of my
Yeah.
focus around the spring. And so this was the perfect
Hmm.
timing for this. And so much of your marriage, so much of your message I have seen play out for us. I always say
Yeah.
sometimes we need post-marital counseling a lot more than premarital
Yeah.
counseling because you don't
Yeah.
know what you don't know
All
until
right.
you get into it. And for us, it was very much the story that we actually met and married in 7 months. And that
Hmm.
was, I don't regret that at all. That was our
Yeah.
story. That was where we
Yeah.
were in our life. That was what was supposed to happen. But the struggles that we had the first few years of marriage, marriage was the catalyst for those things that needed
Hmm.
changing, for the healing that I needed in so many
Yeah.
areas that would not
Yeah.
have risen to the surface without the catalyst
Hmm.
of marriage. I could have just gone
Yeah.
on pretending like I was fine, and like
Yeah.
having my issues in the corner somewhere where no one could see, but then you get married and they're always there. So
Hmm.
they come out
Yeah.
and you either
It's
deal
so
with it,
true.
right? Or you
Yeah.
stuff it and then later it blows
Yeah.
up. And
Yeah.
thankfully, the Lord gave us wisdom to push through that. But I would love to hear really just the heart of your message. Like, what are some of the greatest battles marriages are facing today that you feel that you, especially in Christian families, that you are seeing us
Hmm.
have to deal with, and some of the tips and tricks and ideas of how you know that this is the core, this is how we deal with those things.
Yeah. Well, I think, especially for Christian marriages, one of the things that I see a lot is that people hold in
Hmm.
things that aren't going well because they're really concerned about what everybody else will think about them.
Yeah.
And the truth is, there are no perfect marriages. And I think about John 10:10 a lot because I
Yeah.
think, where it talks about the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy, I think he's very conniving. And I think one of the ways that he does the whole kill, steal, and destroy bit is, oh my goodness, if your small group really knew what
Mm.
you guys were like, if they were a fly on the wall in your home,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, they would tell you, you have no business being a part of our small group, or you have no
Yeah.
business being at this church. And yet, the church is exactly where we should be.
Yeah.
And we should be able to ask for help and at least say, gosh, you're ahead of us on this journey. Help us navigate this because I do love premarital preparation. I think
Sure.
it's a good way to help people have an idea of
Yeah.
some of the things that they're probably going to encounter. I've been doing this long enough
Yeah.
that I know a lot of people come to premarital prep because their parents say, you need to go do that. And they think, we don't need that. We're
Sure.
fine. Then they get married and
Hmm.
they'll say, we probably should have listened a little more closely to that whole thing about managing conflict because we're not
Uh-huh.
doing that very well right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm a believer in the premarital piece, but man, I'm
Sure.
also a believer in recognizing that when you get into marriage, in-laws, your job, busyness,
Hmm.
children, community commitments, church, all of those things go into this recipe
Yeah.
of creating situations where we might feel disconnected, we might feel
Mhm.
lonely in our marriage, we might feel like your parents are all up in our business. They don't belong there. So
Mhm.
what I see right now is people are very busy. When I was talking with people before the pandemic, they were just like, oh my gosh, I'd give anything for the merry-go-round to stop and let us get off and breathe. Then the merry-go-round did stop
Mm-hmm.
forcibly, full on stop.
Mm-hmm.
And some people loved every second of it.
Yeah.
They just felt like, oh my goodness, this I'm breathing, I'm taking time to engage with my spouse and my children. This has been wonderful. And I don't want to go back to how it was before. I'm not going to let it happen. And here we are in 2024, and people are saying,
Mm-hmm.
we are right exactly back where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And we said we wouldn't go there. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's lots of factors playing into it, but the connection piece is probably the biggest. And I think parents feeling like, oh my goodness, if I don't have my children in dance and music and sports and all the things, I'm a less than parent, or I'm depriving my children of experiences. And that's just not true. You know your family better than anybody,
Yeah.
and you know your capacity as parents. And we go through different seasons of marriage. And so
Mm-hmm.
what you have capacity for in one season may not be what you have capacity for in
Yes.
this current season. And you have to be able to say, we're not doing that. I
Yes.
don't feel guilty about it because I know what's in the best interest of my children and my
Mm-hmm.
family. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it always makes me think about Philippians 4:8, where it's like, think about what is true.
oh,
And I can never get
yes.
past that one. What is all the other things, but what is true is the first
Yeah.
thing that just stops me, because 90% of what is
Yeah.
spinning in our heads is not even true. But I
Yeah.
like that pressure to have our
Yeah.
kids in all these things from such a young age. And Tim and I will often stop, and now our kids are getting older, but it's like, did what I do when I was 8, 9, 10 years
Yeah.
old, does it
Oh,
affect
yeah.
anything right now? No.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why do we
Yeah.
think that if our 5-year-old is not in this and doing that, that their whole life's going to be off balance, But and it's this
Yeah.
lie that it's in the
Yeah.
society, but obviously we know that the enemy is the source of that, because he wants us to
Yeah.
be distracted and run thin and on
Yeah.
edge and spread all over the place.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wish we could get everybody to just stop doing all the things. And sometimes the world that we live in is simply I mean, even just going to public school, there's enough things
Mm-hmm.
that come up
Mm-hmm.
that are not even really that optional. It
Yeah.
almost
Oh,
just happens
true.
to us, whether we're choosing them or not. So, what are
Right.
some of the ways that you often help people find this is how you connect in the midst of the crazy, despite,
Mm-hmm.
when you can't always step off the merry-go-round? Like, how do you
Yeah.
keep that connection alive
Yes.
and fight
Yes.
for that?
So connection in the midst of crazy, I think is very important.
Yeah.
Culture tells us that when children come along,
Hmm.
that they should be front and center, your first priority.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, research
Mm-hmm.
shows that a child-centered marriage is the one that's most at risk for distress. And so I don't think there's just this even balance of you're always going to get it right. Like if you're doing it right, it's going to look like this. That's not the
Sure.
case. However, if you are intentional about connection,
Mm-hmm.
that's the key, because when your marriage is healthy and thriving, the chances are much greater for your children to thrive.
Yeah.
They know when mom and dad aren't doing well. And I think a lot of parents, especially us as women, feel guilty about doing what we need to do to take care of ourselves. But when you don't show up as the healthiest version of you,
Yes.
everybody knows, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I can think back to times when my daughter would say, Mom, uh, maybe you need to go take a walk, or maybe you need a nap.
Yep.
You're showing up not great at the moment.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
she was right. She was
Yes.
right. And so it
Yeah.
isn't a luxury to take care of you and to take care of your marriage. It
Yeah.
really is a necessity all the way around. So
Mm-hmm.
thinking about things that you can do, being intentional about a date time, a date night is wonderful. But I think a lot of parents say, I don't even know how we do that. And once we get the kids put to bed, we're exhausted. So it's like,
Mhm.
show me the way to the bathtub so I can sit and
Mhm.
soak, or I just want to go to bed. So being
Mhm.
creative, I do think back to times when Jay and I did get creative. We met for lunch.
Yeah.
We would get up early because we're both early morning people, and we would have time together early in the morning where it was
Mhm.
just the two of us. We could have uninterrupted conversation. I think even when the kids are around, I have a great friend who said our children knew that the 15 minutes after dinner was mom and dad time. They
That's good.
went and they played, and they knew that short
Mhm.
of someone getting hurt, that they were
Mhm.
not to interrupt us, which I think is actually, I think a lot about the fact that we're doing relationship university 101 in
Mhm.
our home.
Mhm.
And so when children learn, hey, this is adult time. Yes, we're all here together, but your mom and I are having a conversation,
Yes.
and we're not to be interrupted. This is our time. That's teaching them, hey, you are not the center of our attention
Yes.
every moment of every day.
Yes.
That there are times when it is just adult time. And that
Mhm.
is healthy for children to learn that.
Amen. Amen. And, we think about what kind of marriage do we want our kids to have? Do we
Yes,
want our children to have a spouse that prioritizes them, puts them first, makes them their focus? Or do we want
yes,
them to have a
yes.
spouse who is constantly distracted by other things? So we need to
Mm-hmm.
model that for our kids. And it's these simple things. Like I'm thinking of all the different stages of marriage, with children
Yes,
especially. And when you've got
yes.
these littles, just teaching them that when you come up and we're talking, you put your hand on me. And I'll put my hand
Mm-hmm.
on you to let you know I acknowledge you, but you wait until it's
Mm-hmm.
your turn. Not just, hey, hey,
Yes,
mommy, mommy, right? These little
right.
bitty things. And it takes being consistent,
Yes,
but you've got to set up healthy things for your
yeah.
children to see that. So you made me
Mm-hmm.
laugh because you mentioned, if you're not hurting or you said something about, this is our time and we're not to be interrupted. And so I bought a sign years ago now, because now our kids are 12 and 14, almost 15. So we've got freshmen in high school and
Mm-hmm.
a finishing up sixth grade, middle school kind of guy. So I bought this sign years ago and I put it on our door. And it's just I don't know, some silly little $5 sign I got. And I put a ribbon on it so I could hang it on the door of our bedroom. And I said, if this, and it wasn't even for like when he was home, sometimes it was just me, I needed a break.
Yeah,
Like if this
yeah,
sign is on my door and my door is closed, unless you are bleeding, dying,
yes,
or throwing
yeah,
up, or the house is on fire, you do not
yeah,
interrupt me. Well, then my kid's like, well, what if
yeah.
somebody's trying to get me? I'm like, well, okay, if somebody's in the house trying to get you, you can interrupt me, But it's like, you don't touch this door if you see this sign,
Yeah.
And
Yes,
just visual cues and little things. And are you familiar with Right Now Media?
I am.
I'm sure you
Yes,
are. So I talk
yes,
about it a lot because it's phenomenal. It's like
yeah,
Christian, YouTube, Netflix, and
yes,
everything rolled into one. Every
yeah.
study, every topic you can think of. But a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't know there's this kids section that is
Mm-hmm.
thousands of shows and cartoons, and they're all based on kids and they're all based on the scripture, and they are
Yeah,
so great. So the reason I bring that up, and I'm going to put in the show notes for everybody, I have a free link that our church gives anybody who wants it. Go to my show notes, click on the link, get your own free account, because you talk about some guilt-free screen time. If you need a break and
yeah,
your kids are
yeah,
so little that you feel like
yeah.
you can't really get away without them being
Yes,
entertained or whatever,
yeah.
you give them, you say, mommy needs quiet time. This is your quiet time. And you give them this
Mm-hmm.
screen and they
Yeah.
can watch Right Now Media and they will start quoting Bible verses and they will be so enjoyed. But you know that they're
Mm-hmm.
watching something that's also
Wholesome.
putting good fruit or
Yeah,
good seeds into them. There's so many
yeah.
ways, but we have to be creative, right?
Right,
We have to
right.
prioritize and be
Yeah.
creative.
Yes, yes.
That's so good. So good. Let's see. So, what do you have to say for dating your spouse? Let's see. Can you give some tips? Because we hear that a lot. And
Yeah.
I know that financially, you're
Mm.
in different
Yeah.
seasons sometimes, and
Yep.
your children, different seasons sometimes. And I know from my husband and
Mm-hmm.
I, when we first realized, hey, we've got to make this a priority, like
Yeah.
in our minds, we never lived near family. So it was costing
Right.
us at
Yes.
least, $10, $15 an hour to
Right.
go out.
Right.
Then you got
Yeah.
to eat, or whatever. So we were literally
Yeah.
watching our clock the whole time. And finally, when we shifted our mind that, okay, this date night is an investment in our marriage, not a
Yes.
frivolity, not a luxury, not something we're taking
Mm-hmm.
from our marriage and from our
Mm-hmm.
family, but it's an
Yeah.
investment that changed everything for us. But I know there's different stages. And do you have
Mm-hmm.
ideas or things you offer
Yeah.
people when they push back and they're like, oh, well, we
Yes.
don't have time or we can't afford
Yeah.
it or our kids are too little,
Yes.
all the things.
Mhm. Yes. I have lots of ideas actually. For
I'm sure you
one,
do.
just to think about this. I have taught teenagers healthy dating relationship skills.
Mm,
And one of the things that comes up is that like 93% of high school age people want to marry. Like they
hmm.
like the idea of marriage. What they don't like is a lot of them are like, well, why would I want a marriage like my parents have? It's
Yeah.
boring. They're always mad at each other and arguing. They're irritable.
So
And
true.
I'm like, oh, this just kills me because
That's
marriage is
sad.
such a wonderful gift.
Yeah.
And there's opportunity to do it well. So this whole date thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think is really imperative. You said it's not a luxury. It's imperative
Yeah.
that we figure out how to spend time together, just husband and wife, because it's good for you and it's good for the health of your family.
Yes.
So, for kids to see you making a priority is a strong message.
Mm-hmm.
For them to see how you are when you have time together.
Yeah.
And to your point about money, I have spoken to mops a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say to them, if you don't have anybody in your community, call me. I will be happy to help you with your kids because it's that
It's
important.
that important.
But
Yeah.
finding people in your trusted circle that are
Yes.
willing to trade with you. You
Mm-hmm.
barter. I'll keep your kids while y'all go on a date. You keep ours while we go on a date. So
Yes.
there's bartering. Also, like if you find yourself, I did a marriage retreat for missionaries one time and we just put together a whole list of in-home dates because they honestly couldn't go out.
Yeah.
So I reminded them that a lot of times you put your kids to bed and they'll say, well, I'm not tired. Bedtime is not just for children. Bedtime is for adults because you
Mm-hmm.
that adult time in the evening. So
Yes.
even if your children aren't tired,
Yes.
help them to see you may not be tired, but you're going to be in your room. You may read a book.
Exactly.
You all may play a game together, but this is adult time and you're
Totally.
setting boundaries with them.
Yeah.
So you put them to bed, you create a nice dinner, you have conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And is it challenging as you're trying to get your children in a rhythm to do that? Yes, it is. It's worth it though.
Yes.
So I think there's lots of ways around financially. We can't afford a babysitter, or we don't have family around. Find your support system, and that's why I feel like church is so important. Small groups
Mm-hmm.
are really helpful and not being afraid to find people around you who are a bit ahead of you on the journey, but very interested in doing life on life with you. And so they're willing to step in and be support. We have done that frequently throughout our married life for other couples in order for them to have the time together. And we would say to them, hey, this is a priority. We're willing to step up because
Yeah.
this is important for you.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I know that my husband's one time I not too long after we kind of realized, okay, this is a priority.
Yeah.
One night he was like, I forgot how much I like you.
Oh my
Right?
gosh, I love that so much because it's true. When
Yes.
you're in the throes of life, you forget.
You do.
And so when you have that time, it's like, oh my gosh, we actually really do have so much fun when we're together.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
We can have fun and we can laugh and we can, oh, oh my goodness. And I agree. We see so many marriages kind of going back to that child-centered marriage situation.
Yeah.
So many where once the kids begin to be independent and not need you so much and not be
Yeah.
around all the time, it's kind of
Yeah.
like there's this disconnect. You're like, who are you? I don't even remember who you are.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
we are changing. We're not meant to be
Mhm.
in our
Mm.
40s. The person we were when we married in our 20s, we're not supposed to be those
Correct.
same people.
Right.
But if we
Right.
don't bring each other along as we
Yeah.
grow, then we are not going to know who that person is, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I tell people frequently, when your child, really, before your child comes into the world,
Mhm.
you are beginning to prepare for the empty nest. And all the way through raising your children,
Yeah.
your goal for them is to grow and go. So
Yes.
if your
Yes.
identity is completely wrapped up in, oh, I'm Ashley's mom, that's who I am, that's
Mhm.
all of what I am focused
Mhm.
on, we're missing out on the fact that they are truly, the goal is grow and go. And then when you get to the empty nest, instead of looking at each other and going, I married you because,
Yeah.
looking at each other and going, okay, so now we have this next
Yeah.
opportunity
Yeah.
to do all kinds of other things. And we're still parenting. We're still
Yeah.
parenting a young adult.
Yeah.
However, the focus has changed and we get to think through, what do we want to do now? Instead
Yeah.
of, I don't even know who I am. And I
Yeah.
definitely don't know who you are or
Yeah.
what we are.
Yeah. And you made me think, I think that one thing that is really a good idea that I don't think people do enough is when you have those, either a date night or kids get to go to their room and read and play and whatever, but mommy
Yes.
daddy time. When you
Yeah.
have that time and you sit down, dream a little bit about what do we want to do when we're empty nesters?
Hmm.
Like, what do we
Oh,
want
yeah.
that part of our life to look like? And
Yeah.
obviously, there's so much that goes into that. We need to be financially preparing for that and putting away so that we can enjoy. But dreaming together, like, what are some places we'd like to travel to? Whatever it
Hmm.
is, what do we want that to look like? That's
Yeah.
so fun. And I found that in sometimes those conversations, I learn things about my husband that I had no
Hmm.
idea he was interested in that. And
Yeah.
then it's
Yeah.
fun because you're kind of,
Yeah.
even if it never happens, you're imagining together and you're creating
Yes.
this whole other little world and looking forward to something instead of not
Yes.
ever putting
Yeah.
any thought into that.
And I have people say, I'll think about that when I actually have to cross that bridge.
Exactly.
And there's something to be said for preparation, kind of, okay, anticipating further down the road.
Hmm.
On our website, winshapemarriage.org, we actually have a PDF on visioning for your marriage
Fun.
and encouraging couples, no matter what season you're in. Maybe you had a vision for your marriage when you got married, but 5 or 10 years in, you're like, okay, well, we've done that. Now what? And that's a
Hmm.
great time to take that information and again think through, what are we visioning for the future
Yeah.
as our children get older and go off to college or get a job?
Hmm.
What about us? And we
Yeah.
even, for people who are like, I'm not creative, I don't have a good idea for date nights or conversation starters, we have literally hundreds of
Yeah.
those
That's so
on our
fun.
website. And you can go there so that you don't have to be creative. We've done the work for you.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is pretty easy. It's just throw a blanket down in the backyard, grab some hot chocolate, go
Hmm.
outside and sit with a candle and look up at the stars and dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is. And again, kind of going back to that, what is true? There's this excuse that it's
Yes.
too hard or it's not possible or it's too
Mm.
expensive or it's not important or, all these things. And the fact is, it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
Simple is probably better because usually when we
Yes.
overcomplicate even a date night, it never turns out the way we think it's supposed to. We just end up
Yes.
mad.
Right.
Simple
Right.
is can be so much
Yeah.
better. So what
Okay.
about the woman listening right now who thinks all this is great, but my marriage is on its last leg and my
Yeah.
spouse shows no interest in trying to get to a healthier place?
Yeah.
What do you say to that woman?
Well, I think the first thing that I would say is it does take two to tango. It only takes one person to change the dance.
Mm,
And so even if your spouse doesn't show interest in doing anything different right now, you go get help from a good Christian counselor
yeah.
who can help you determine what are some things that you could do differently. I know a lot of times we think just raising our voice and saying the same thing over and over again will eventually get someone's attention. And the truth is, we just kind of begin to block them out. And we also do what we know.
Yeah.
The goal would be to learn to do something different and recognize you may not have all the tools that you need when it comes to how you're communicating, how you're coming across, or how you're managing conflict.
Mhm.
So being able to take a look at you and showing up as the healthiest version of you is a gift you give yourself. And it's also a gift that you give to your marriage. I think a lot of people stand around saying, well, when they decide that
Mhm.
they're ready to do something different, I'll engage.
Mhm.
And it just takes one person to decide, you know what, I'm actually going to start doing something different. I also think that a lot of times we as women, we are unhappy. We blame our spouse, but it actually has a lot more to do with my frame of mind, what I'm expecting, but I haven't said anything. I just want
Mhm.
you to know. You should know.
Yes. I
We've
shouldn't
been
have to tell
married.
you, right?
If I
Oh
have
my
to tell
gosh.
you, you don't really love me, but
Mm.
none of us are mind readers.
Mhm.
And the healthiest thing we can do is sit down and say, I feel loved when you, or I feel cherished when you. I'm struggling right now. I I don't think I get enough time with you. And what fills my tank is time with you. I am a quality time gal, and I'm also acts of service.
Mm.
And to make my husband guess at that
Mhm.
is only going to be more frustrating and build up resentment for me.
Yeah.
So I can remember a really long time ago. Um, I walked in the house and Jay was folding towels and he was folding them in half and in half and in half. And
Mhm.
I looked at him and I said, babe, that is not the way you fold towels. You fold towels like this. And I started walking away. And then I thought, I'm an idiot.
I know.
My husband is folding
Holding
towels. Like
towels.
he's actually seeking to be helpful. Is it honestly a thing how they're folded? No, it is not. And so I even think through, are there ways that I
Mm.
have actually shut Jay down
Yes.
when he has tried to help instead of saying thank you? And I'll tell you, like one of the ways I can shut Jay down is if he's loaded the dishwasher and I go reload it the correct
Are you an
way.
Enneagram 1?
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm an eight. I'm
Okay.
an
Ones
eight.
and eights have a lot of those same issues, I
Yeah, a
think.
lot. Yeah. But the truth is, I have done lots of I've had lots of conversations with men who say,
Mhm.
yeah, I was all in at the beginning. However, she proceeded to like make me her DIY project
Mm, mm,
and help me to understand that I don't know how to do laundry. I don't know how to vacuum correctly. I don't even know how to do the dishes correctly.
mhm.
And I would just say to all of us as women, most men have a great heart and they really do want to partner with you. But if we're constantly correcting them
Yeah.
and telling them you're less than, you're second string, don't mess with the parenting, eventually they will back off. And when they do
Mhm.
back off, we get mad.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you not helping? Because you critique me every time I do.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
think there's a
So much
lesson to be
truth.
learned there about, hey, your spouse is made in the image of God just like you are.
Yeah.
And you have weaknesses and flaws just like they do. And
Mhm.
so, man, um, my best form is to remember to look at my spouse through the eyes of Christ.
Mhm.
And we're not looking for perfection here. We're looking for healthy. So
Yeah.
the intentionality around saying healthy people ask for what they need. and
Mhm.
recognizing that different isn't deficient. It's just different. And if we're both exactly alike, that's going to be boring. And that's not
Yeah.
what God intended for marriage. He intended us to
Yeah.
live out of the abundance, the second half of John 10:10, right?
Yes.
Living out of the abundance. And what does that look like?
Yes.
It looks like being
Yes.
a team, attacking problems together,
Mhm.
not attacking each other. And, you know, I recognize we've probably all heard all of those things so many times,
Mhm.
myself included. But every time I teach it, every time I talk about it, I am reminded my spouse
Yeah.
is a gift. My
Yeah.
spouse is a gift. My marriage is a gift. Children are a gift. And
Yeah.
so we have this opportunity to figure out how to do this journey really
Mhm.
well and to make it look inviting for our children, for the
Yeah.
people around us. That's
Yeah.
that's the difference in being a believer.
Mhm.
We are not of this world. We're in it. We're in
Yeah.
it for a period of time. And
Yeah.
so we get to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
And what a gift.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally. I love all of that. And I just there's so much ability we have, especially to we got to stop. Okay, so like God says to me, we can't be our spouse's Holy Spirit. And
Definitely not.
there was a time when I remember and I was just like so frustrated. I'm just like praying, like, God, why don't you tell him? Da, 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 da. And I remember God going, you know what? He can't hear me because you won't stop talking. It's like,
Yeah.
ouch, right? We can do that. We can get
Yes.
into that situation. But I will say the one of the first things you said for me was so powerful is getting healthy on your own, getting counseling. I started counseling not for my marriage, not for my husband, but for some
Yeah.
like depression, anxiety are parts of my story. And there were
Yeah.
definitely some things
Yeah.
that I needed to deal with. And by the grace of God, I've got this amazing Christian counselor, and she is so incredible. And as she and I began to meet and not talk about marriage, talk about some of these other things that I was struggling
Right.
with, like you
Yes.
said, the overflow of that, my
Yes.
marriage that was already in a now our first 3 years were really hard. We didn't really hit the
Yeah.
honeymoon phase till about year 7. I mean, we went through some stuff, but because we attacked
Yeah.
that stuff and went through the
Yeah.
stuff, and
Yeah.
we created a safe space where we're like, okay, divorce doesn't exist. We're stuck. So we
Right.
need to
Let's
deal with
figure it
this.
out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we kind of made a safety zone where we could get in there and just duke it out.
Yeah.
And it was not pretty for a
Yes.
while. But
Yeah.
all that to say, about year 14, 15, I started going to counseling for myself. And we like hit this next level because of I got healthier and the
Yeah.
overflow of that. But also, you know what it did? It relieved my husband of this burden of feeling like he needed to fix me all the time because I was
Mhm.
constantly coming to him. He was my only sounding board. He was the one I could
Right.
go to. And these are
Yeah.
my struggles. This is what I'm dealing with. And I was a broken
Yeah.
record. And
Yes.
it wasn't okay for me to share my struggles.
Right.
But he wasn't a professional. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't really know how to handle all of this you're giving me.
Yeah.
And I was constantly bringing this to him. And it wasn't
Yes.
getting better. But every time we were together, that's what came out. So when I
Yeah.
had another person that I could share this with, that I could vent to her, she could be my sounding board. And not only that, but from a professional perspective,
Hmm.
help me pull some of that apart and get to the root of things and have the tools I needed to move forward and get healthier. All of a sudden he could be my husband again and not my
Yeah.
counselor, not my
Yeah.
fixer, not, and oh my goodness, we
Yeah.
just got into such a better place simply because I began to get healthier on my
Yeah.
own. So that alone will flow.
Well, and I don't want to miss a couple of things that you said.
Yeah.
There's a great book by Sue Johnson and Kenny Sandifer called Created for Connection.
Ooh,
I strongly encourage people to read that. But you made the statement, divorce wasn't an option. And so for couples, if you're dealing with affairs, abuse, addiction, you need to seek professional help.
yes.
You need to seek professional help from someone who can guide you through
Yes.
the process of dealing with what you are facing.
Hmm.
Now, most couples, 76% of couples who divorce, they're not dealing with that.
Yeah.
They are dealing with lack of commitment, lack of connectedness. And here's the thing. I talk with a lot of people who, as long as you are entertaining, like thinking in your mind, what would my life be like if,
Yes.
versus focusing on, you know what? Divorce is not an option. I mean, Jay and I are both children of divorce. And I told Jay before we got married, if you're willing to entertain divorce, I can't marry you because I've
Yes.
already been down that road and I am unwilling to go there. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm closing that window, closing that door, and that means we have to figure it out,
Exactly.
which requires intentionality, the same type of intentionality that we often approach our careers with and our golf game and other things.
Mm-hmm.
We're super intentional about learning and
Yes.
growing and trying to figure out what are the best things that I can do that for your
Mm-hmm.
marriage.
Mm-hmm.
That's what will take you to the whole different level. And I love what you said about your husband cannot be your everything. I
Mm-mm. Not
mean,
fair.
yes, he's your lover, he's your friend, he's your confidant, but the circle has to be wider in terms of there need to be other people who are also walking the road with you, not doing your marriage work with you. You do that with your spouse,
Mm-hmm.
but encouraging you, being your friend, helping you, being a truth teller in your life,
People of the
right?
same sex, I guess we should say.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
not
And I
seek that
mean,
male coworker as our confidant about our
no,
marriage.
let's not seek that because that's a dangerous place. So thank you for that
Mm-hmm.
clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And also having couple friends,
Yes.
and we have this rule, like we'll date a couple because the rule is we have to like both of you
It's so hard.
for you
It's
to
so
hang with us. It is hard.
it's so hard.
But finding that group of people where, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we all like each other, we respect each other, we are for your marriage.
Yeah.
I care enough about you that I'm going to be a truth teller. And boy, that is vital for the
Mm-hmm.
health and the thriving of
Mm-hmm.
your marriage relationship. That you don't place, I mean, goodness, if you place all of that pressure on your spouse,
Yeah.
that's a lot to shoulder.
Yes. Yes. And you
So,
know what? God is not going to allow
mm,
anyone
mm,
else to take the place that only He wants to
mm.
fill in our hearts.
Oh, most definitely.
And yet
Yeah.
we consistently seem to try to get this person to fill everything. And God's
Yeah.
not going to let that happen. And
No.
so I had Gary Thomas on the show back a couple
Mm-hmm.
years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
he's the one that wrote
Mm-hmm.
Sacred Marriage. And
Right.
it was such a great, I'll link to that episode too, but just such a great man. But I love one of the things he always says. And when I heard this a decade ago, it rocked my world. He says, "What if marriage is more about making you holy than making you happy?"
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Oh,
oh."
yeah. I think that the passage about marriage is a mystery.
Mhm.
And I do think that there is a lot to that. I think, and happiness is relative,
Yeah,
right? You can be going through a lot and you might say, okay, I'm not necessarily like just full of happiness at the
yeah,
moment, but am I fulfilled? Do I see God working in our lives? Are there things happening? Yes, there are. It's just there's a lot going on at the
yeah,
moment.
yeah.
So, and that's when I mentioned earlier about this opportunity for couples who are really facing challenges, but nobody's got a foot out the door. The experience is called the journey, and it's a
Mhm.
therapeutic experience, and it is for that moment when life is really full. Maybe there's some missing conversations for us, and we need to have the opportunity to breathe,
Mhm.
look at each other, and have those conversations. And perhaps we do need an objective third party
Yeah,
to help us do that.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there's a lot to that statement.
I love that. I love that. And just remembering that our God is a God who breathes life into dry bones. He
Yeah.
brings beauty from ashes.
Oh,
And if our
yes.
marriage hadn't struggled as it did, we would not be where we are. It's
Yeah.
part of what makes our marriage so strong now. Is the
Hmm.
stuff that we dealt with,
Yes.
in the first few
Yeah.
years, and then you kind of deal with
Yes.
more. But it's going through and fighting for,
Hmm.
that
Yes,
that's where the strength comes from. And it's
for sure.
so much better that way. It
Right.
really is.
Right. Yeah.
Like you said at the beginning, not perfect. Definitely
No,
not
just
perfect.
healthy.
Just
Yeah.
healthy. I love
Yeah.
that. That is a beautiful
Yeah.
phrase. I love that. Is there anything else before we start to wrap things up that we haven't talked about on this topic of marriage that you want to be sure we don't close out here without?
I think I would just say that if you are in a marriage that is in crisis, there are intensives that are available to couples that kind of squash a number of weeks of therapy
Mhm.
into a week-long experience that then can launch you into a consistent continuing to work through the issues. And I have seen so many marriages where people have said, this is hopeless. You can forget it. There's no
Mhm.
way that we're going to
Mhm.
be able to get out of this ditch. And they actually do get out of the ditch. I had a man who attended one of the marriage retreats that we were leading, and he came up to me and he said, if you had told me 6 months ago
Mhm.
we'd be here, I would have laughed at you in the face,
Mhm.
because when we drove on campus to come to a marriage intensive, I was driving. We have a large car, and my wife was sitting in the furthest seat away from me. She
Wow.
did not want anything to do with me.
Wow. Wow.
Came to the intensive, and here we are 6 months later, and things are not perfect, but we're on the road and we can
Mhm.
see progress and we're doing the work
Yeah.
to get healthy.
Yeah.
And I could tell you lots more stories like that, but
Yeah.
I would just say, don't give up hope. That there are resources out there that can help you. We certainly have some on our website, and there are others across the country who are doing this type of marriage intensive work. Just check it out and
Yeah.
make sure that people are qualified to be doing
Mhm.
that with you, and go for it,
Yeah.
because your marriage is worth that. I watch people throw in the towel because they've been unhappy for 3 months or unhappy for
Mm.
6 months or even a year.
Mm.
And it makes my heart hurt, because it isn't that they couldn't have gotten out of the ditch.
Sure.
It's that they made the decision to throw in the towel.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mm. It's good, and it is. It's so worth it, and I like what you said. There are other people out there. I think a lot of times the enemy
yeah.
wants to tell us we're the only
Oh,
ones, and we're hiding in
no.
our house, and nobody knows what we're going through, and no one knows how bad it
Yeah.
really is, and he wants to tell us, "Oh, you can't tell anybody because that would rock everybody's world, and you're such a fake, and what's wrong with you?" But yet, no, there are other couples probably
Yes.
right next door, going
Yes.
through many of the same things, but
Yes.
also knowing that there are other couples also working
Hmm.
and working
Yeah.
hard and working towards that. So I will link to the page. I've been on your website and seen those intensives and everything, and they all take
Okay.
place in Rome, Georgia,
Hmm.
right?
The ones that are on our page, they are in Rome, but there are others in Branson and Texas and California.
Great.
They're offered all over the place. So yes, there's
Excellent.
opportunity to get help
That's
for
so good.
sure.
Just
Yes.
get away. I love it. And do you sometimes offer
Yes.
scholarships? Is there a program for
We
things like
do.
that?
Hmm.
Wonderful.
Hmm.
Okay. So I want
Yes.
everybody to go there,
Yes.
even if you're thinking,
Yeah.
I can't
Oh,
afford a date night. How am I going to
yeah.
afford an
Yeah.
intensive weekend?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
look
I'm
into
so
that.
glad you said that. Don't let money be the barrier from getting the help you need. Even if you don't do it through WinShape, most of the time,
Yeah.
if you will say, is there a way that we could do a payment plan, or would you work with us financially because we really do want help? A
Sure.
lot of people are very willing to work with folks because they're there passionate about helping you to get healthy. So
Exactly. That's the mission.
yeah,
So
yeah,
wonderful. So as we wrap up, I always ask my guests some of the similar questions. And the
yes.
first one is, do you have a life verse or a verse that is especially bringing you life right now?
Yes. So, um, for I know the plans I have for you, saith the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. I think about that a lot. I have watched him through my life, through the hard times.
Mm.
Um, I have watched him carry me. And even some of the hardest times have been the things that I have learned the most from, have been
Absolutely.
the most powerful, and have helped me to do what I do better.
Absolutely.
So, and I would say right now that probably Philippians 4 6 and 7, don't be anxious about anything. These are crazy times.
Mhm.
And man, if you listen to the culture, it can be so divisive. And it
Mhm.
just reminds me, I I am told it's a command, do not be anxious about anything, but present your requests to the Lord and lean
Yeah.
not on your own understanding. And so I would say that those two are kind of right here in the
Mhm.
forefront a
Mhm.
lot,
So good.
along with John 10:10, just reminding me we're called to live in the abundance because I have a Savior who died on the cross and rose for me.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
therefore, I have this opportunity to live in
Yes.
abundance.
Yeah.
So
Not just like when we get to heaven, but right here, right now, we can
right
live in the
now,
kingdom and
right.
experience that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
good. So, do you have a practical tip of a way that you would encourage our listeners to intertwine their walk with the Lord in their everyday life?
I was thinking about that. And I just think I have this ongoing conversation with God all day long. I kind of start in the
Yeah.
morning. There's a really cool app, Lectio 365, that they have a morning and an evening devotion. And so I will listen to that a lot of times before I ever
Yes.
get up out of bed. I love the verse of the day on the Bible app,
Mhm.
but I really try to start my day praying and just to continue the conversation throughout the day. It's helpful to me because when I think about don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, I
Mhm.
can get all up in my flesh. And it's just a good reminder, hey, the Lord's walking with me in the midst of this conversation
Yeah.
or in what I'm thinking or processing or trying to figure out. And that has been helpful to me
Good.
to kind of start the conversation and keep it going throughout the day. And just thinking about how do you worship,
Mhm.
music, nature, all of that
Mhm.
really, really speaks to me. So
Yeah.
thinking about those things and listening to music that point me to Jesus and who he is, the truth about who I am and who he's calling me to be.
Amen. Oh, good. All right. So, resource that you want to point our listeners to. We've mentioned a lot of great resources.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
it the
yeah.
intensives? Is it the website overall?
All the above.
All the
Yeah.
stuff. All
I,
the stuff.
I for sure would say that book, Creative for
I
Connection,
will definitely put that in.
outstanding. And we have a lot of great resources on the website. So winshapemarriage.org would be a great place to go. Following us on Instagram, we put just a lot of helpful snippets
Mm,
out on Instagram regularly. So
sure.
things to think about, things to do, date night, creative date night ideas that don't
Yeah.
take much. Maybe they have to do with the season, or maybe they're just a general idea, but there's lots of good things that come out there. And certainly taking advantage of the retreats and offerings that we have. We have a blog that's out there and a podcast that will be launching soon.
Oh, great.
So lots of great ways to get more information and to hear from some
Wonderful.
of the marriage champions that we're engaged with as well.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome. Very
yeah.
exciting. All right. And where can my people find you and connect with you?
WinShapeMarriage.org for sure. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Julie Baumgardner. So
All
people
right.
are welcome to follow me there.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us today. It was great.
My pleasure. This has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you for all you're doing to put really good information out to help people do married well.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, friend, if you enjoyed this episode and you got some good stuff out of it, there's a few options you have. One, you could click that little subscribe button. And also, if you would review this podcast, oh my gosh, if you like what you heard, get on there, give it a 5-star review. If you didn't like what you heard, just pretend it never happened, okay? But if you would do a review for me, just take a couple seconds and do that. Not only would I be crazy excited, but also it would just be a great way for us to partner together, for you to help this podcast be seen by more women out there. And you could be a part of helping more women discover these practical ways to apply God's word to just everyday stuff. So I would love it, love it, love it if you could help me out in one of those two ways.